Hello guys and girls, and welcome back to another episode of Seb Talks Sports, sponsored by Hoopin and Luton, the place to go to for your favourite new and vintage jerseys and apparel from all things basketball.
I've got a very special guest today on Seb Talks Sports, as it's one of the most productive NFL players of all time at his position. A man who made the All-Pro first team in his rookie season and racked up no fewer than 3 Pro Bowl appearances on his way to recording 131 career sacks, also notching an unofficial NFL record for the most sacks in a single season with 23. It's Detroit Lions franchise legend, Bubba Baker. Enjoy.
My guest today is one of the most productive defensive ends of all time, a first-team All-Pro as a rookie and a 3-time Pro Bowler who racked up 131 total career sacks and holds the unofficial NFL record with 23 sacks in a single season. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome to Seb Talks Sports, Bubba Baker. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic, Seb.
Great to hear, Very excited to get into it.
Yeah, I'm glad. Hey, you left out one thing.
Yep.
I was actually Rookie of the Year with Earl Campbell in 1978.
Yeah, Rookie of the Year, of course.
A lot of people forget that, and just being around him, talk about awesome.
Oh, yeah.
What an awesome human being.
Right, let's get into it. I want to start right at the very beginning. So what are your earliest memories of football, and who was your sporting inspiration growing up?
I was exactly 10 years old, and I saw a guy whose name was Chuck Howley, number 54 for the Dallas Cowboys, on the way Sunday football was set up. He had his helmet under his left arm and his right hand over his heart. And he came running out of that tunnel. And I looked at him, and all I could think of was, I want to be a superhero like him. That's what football players were to us kids when I was 10, which is 55 years ago. There was only one game on Sunday. There was no second game, certainly no Sunday night. Monday night it just started, but there was no Thursday or playoffs on Saturday. That was it. So you crowded around the TV. So when he came out, the cameras came on him, and he said, Chuck Howley, captain of the Dallas Cowboys, and had his hand over, and ran. I was like, that's it. And it was just so big. It was the Dallas Cowboys. I was hooked. That was it. And that's what football players, whether we like it or not, represent in the game. They're heroes. They're human heroes, so they make mistakes. But man, their platform is humongous. Looking back 30-something years ago when I retired, it's even bigger now than it was then. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you've absolutely nailed that. Okay, so after helping the Colorado State Rams to a 9-2-1 record and being selected as an all-conference defensive end in 1977, you then, of course, received that special call that all college players dream of during the NFL draft. After fellow all-time greats Earl Campbell, like we just mentioned, James Lofton and Ozzie Newsome were taken in round 1, Detroit's general manager Russ Thomas picked up the phone and gave you a call to be the latest addition to a Lions defense that was looking to secure its first winning season in 6 years. So how much did that mean to you and your family to be drafted with the 40th overall pick in round 2? And how excited were you to get going and start contributing at the pros?
To be honest, Seb, I was ticked off. Yeah, back then, it was a whole different setup. There was no ESPN. There was no combine. It was just a phone call.
Yep.
So I had just come back a week before. I had visited Dallas, the Jets, and the Steelers. All three of them told me they were going to take me in the first round. By the time they took me in the second round, I was crying. Tears was running out of my house. So I walked out of my house, and Russ Thomas called, and my roommate, one of my tenants that was staying in my home, came running down the street and saying, hey, the Lions just called. They drafted you. There was a defensive lineman, Lavelle Edwards, that had gotten drafted, I think, from the University of Colorado. I was like number 10. And I was told that I was going to be in the, you know what I mean? I was told I was going to be in those top linemen. And I had 28 sacks as a senior. Well, back then we called them tackles for loss. And the longer I sat there and waited, and and it would show up on TV. There was no ESPN. It would flash on there that the Denver Broncos just took Lavelle Edwards. Lavelle Short, that was his name. So I was seething, which is part of the game. Yeah. I that was my first thought. Like, I'll show them. Literally, I was in tears. And so that was kind of how it started. And I have to be honest, the Lions were the last of 2 teams that I wanted to go to.
Oh, wow.
Well, when you're being drafted in the way it was set up then, you pick the teams that paid the best in your head.
Yep.
And the Lions and the Steelers were two of the worst paying teams back in the late 70s. So when me and my agent had discussed it, Dallas, San Diego, and of course the Giants were the top three teams that paid lavishly for talent, and they had a history of having first round, not be successful. So we wanted to go to those teams. Of course, we wanted to make as much money as possible, but that was my start, man. It wasn't a glorious start, but it lent itself to me because it gave me a chip on my shoulder. And, when we went through 8-week two-a-days for rookie camp, it motivated me on the days like today where, here in the States, where on the East Coast, it's 100 plus degrees. I didn't feel it. All I could think about was what had occurred and how I had, in my mind, how I played it out, that I had been deceived. That's part of being a defensive end. You got to find something that just grates you under your skin to make you get there no matter how many people in front of you. And so it gave me a nice little platform that no matter what was going on, I had to remind myself, you got something to prove.
That came to fruition straight away from day one, because your rookie season that followed that call was an incredibly special one indeed. I don't say that lightly, because it was probably the greatest rookie season by a defensive end in NFL history. Of course, it was an all-time league record 23 sacks, which we'll get to in more detail shortly, and a fumble recovery earned you not only Defensive Rookie of the Year award, but a well-deserved spot on the All-Pro first team, an achievement almost unheard of for a pro player in his first NFL season. So just how special was that rookie season for you as a player, and how much work in terms of playbook study, film study, etc., what you're putting in behind the scenes to achieve such greatness at 22 years old?
You nailed it, Seb. It was a lot of work, but I was blessed. Didn't know it then, but I had the absolute perfect coach in Floyd Peters. He quickly got wind of, my chip on my shoulder, and he knew that I had ability. I had something that the NFL wasn't doing at that time. I knew it could have potentially been my weakness, but I wanted to make it a strength. And I was a 4-year basketball player in high school and college. And in my head, it didn't make sense for me to run into a 290 pounds was a big tackle, and they weren't very agile. They just all wanted you to run right into them and show you how strong they were. And I wanted to avoid them. And so I was one of the first guys that came along that said, I'm not going to run smack dab into you. I'm going to take a side of you. I'm going to make you move those big stiff legs of yours. And that was my whole, when I met Floyd Peters and Monty Clark and Floyd Peters, our opening conversation, Floyd said this to me. And again, he knew what made me tick. He watched me in some of the bowl games in college. And of course, he studied, the personnel studied me. And he knew I had, if you will, a mean streak, because you had to have that in those days, because the running backs could chop you, the tight end could chop you. There was no protection for a defensive lineman. You were your own protector. You had to take care of yourself. It was a different game than it is today, by the way. A lot more physical. A lot of things happened between the whistles, and you had to take care of them. When I got there as a rookie, I was already seasoned. I was already ready. I was in the best condition because of basketball, and I was a distance runner. I'd run 2 or 3 half marathons in Boulder, in the mountain, Boulder, Colorado.
Wow.
So I knew that my disadvantage had to become my advantage, and that was I needed to be superiorly conditioned because I wasn't a weightlifter. I was a basketball player. So when I got to camp, guys were bent over, and their noses were running because we had to run sprints. It didn't faze me at all. I was in the front of the line. In fact, I won the half mile. We had to run 6 quarter miles, which is 1.5 miles for time. And I had the best time. And the closest guy to me was a kicker named Benny Ricardo. I went on to do that every year at the Detroit Lions.
Whoa.
The first thing we had to do was run 1.5 miles to see if you were conditioned. And my rookie year, I took off like it was a 100-yard dash or a 40, and I didn't stop because I had something to prove. And so, I broke the record for 2 years previous. A guy named Mike Lucci had run, the fastest time. And so I broke his record because I went and looked it up and I saw it and I said, I got to beat that pace. I had the the pacing watch, before it was back in the day, it was called Casio. I had one of those. I was like, look, when we get in there, I got to show every single chance that I get. And that's what projected me to be a starter when the veterans came in. There was no question that they had to put me on the field, but then I had to prove it at that next speed, which was preseason.
Yeah.
And for a rookie, it's showtime. It's not like you got to cruise through preseason and thinking about getting hurt. If you don't show it, then you won't be seen. And back those days, it was probably 180 people in camp. I mean, It was just, we called it the Gong Show. I mean, those guys in there that drove, there was postal workers, UPS, their trucks were out in the parking lot. They were trying to make it and better their lives, man. It was a wonderful time. It was very competitive.
Yeah.
It was very competitive.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's crazy. I can't imagine that many people at training camp and mini camp, and wow.
It's only 80 to invite now, but back then it was the craziest thing you ever seen. There was guys that are in their late 20s trying to make another go at it, and just think, a lot of those guys came off the streets and they used them as special teamers because they were expendable. Yeah. They sent them down to break that wedge, and they break their leg, and they go, all right, off with another one. I mean, it was pretty crazy, man.
That's amazing. It's so different to nowadays, isn't it? Okay, so what you achieved in Detroit as a defensive end, of course, is nothing short of extraordinary. NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year award, first team All-Pro in 78, 3 consecutive Pro Bowls, twice the NFL single-season sack leader in 78 and 80, inducted into the Lions' 75th anniversary team and all-time team, which is obviously an incredible honor. And you racked up no fewer than 74 sacks in just 66 games in Detroit, which places you second on the all-time total sack list for the team, behind just Robert Porcher. So as the team that drafted you into the NFL and helped you achieve one of the most productive 5-year stints a pass rusher has ever accomplished, what do the Detroit Lions mean to you?
It was a wonderful opportunity. When you break it down, if you go the first round and a half, that means that those other 20, by the way, it was only 28 teams there. There was no Jacksonville and there was no Houston, those kinds of franchises. Well, it was Houston, but they were the Oilers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was the league was divided differently. What did it mean? If the Lions hadn't given me an opportunity, you and I wouldn't be talking. So I'm very grateful to the Lions for giving me that opportunity. But I'm even more grateful that the man that they brought in to teach me the art of pass rushing, Floyd Peters, and the way he handled me, which was very rough. He was hard on me. He was 3 sacks, 10 tackles, a blocked field goal in the Washington game as a rookie. And we got into the film room and he ripped me apart because he caught me on a play. And he said, "Is that your best effort?" And it wasn't. So the way he coached me, I found out about 10 years after I had retired because I didn't care for him. Nobody likes discipline. He told me this story. He had come down with dementia. And he said, "The reason I treated you the way I treated you was because I saw something in you that I didn't see in the rest of the guys." When somebody tells you that, because, if you've ever been coached, who likes to be, coached and screamed at and cursed? I mean, he cursed me. My middle name was a 4-letter word, but he didn't care about that. See, and that's what's different about today. That wasn't why he was there.
Yeah. So
he knew that if he ticked me off, it'd be the other guy who I'd take it out on. And then we'd start that whole process back over on Monday. He'd call us in, he'd coach us, he'd say, hey, kid, you had a good game, blah, 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 blah. But couldn't you have done this differently? You could have got another sack if you'd have done this, if you'd have done that. That was Floyd Peters. He was all about coaching up his athletes. And he treated everybody differently, which for a 22-year-old, 21-year-old, when I first got with him, I was 21, right? You don't have a clue what's going on. You think that person doesn't like you. But what he said to me some 10 years after retirement, it's 23 years later from the first time I met him, he pretty much said, "You were special. And I knew that if I didn't bring it out of you, you might not have ever discovered it." And he told me face to face right as we met, he told me the 3 things. He said, "I'm going to tell you something, kid. You can eat your way out of this. You can drink and do drugs your way out. or you can go after women. And he said, and by the way, I had brought a puppy with me, a boxer puppy that a girl gave me. He said, send that dang on dog home because you ain't going to have time to be with a dog. And I sent her home. Her name was Jo. And he was right. I mean, I had to study my playbook from morning till night. I mean, literally, I had to get up in the morning because once they found out that I could play, they started feeding me, fast feeding me. You know what I mean? Just kind of, let's see if he can handle this. Let's see if he can handle it. I'm talking blitzes, different assignments. And, you know, whether you went outside or inside, he had probably, honestly, we probably had, well, he was the father of what we call games, where defensive linemen on pass rush go different directions, you do different things. That's probably 12 of them. And Doug English was the guy that called the signals. And he and I developed hand signals so we didn't have to talk, you know. So Doug would give me a sign, and right away I knew it was Baltimore or 49er or you game or me game, you know. I mean, he'd give me a sign and that was it. He'd also change the sign, you know, because guys cross from you after you played against them, you get 2-3 sacks. They want to get everything they can get on you. So if they see him do this, and so we would do what we call sucker sacks. He'd make a sign and they go, oh, it's the me game. You know, they tell each other and we wouldn't have a game on. As a rookie, you had to take all that in, or what we call dummy calls. Doug would scream over to me, blue, 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 blue. It meant nothing. But to my tackle, he'd be looking inside like, here it comes, you know, because we ran so many games. But as a rookie, you did not have the room to make a mistake. Yeah. So I had to know this is what they had in their repertoire as Floyd, as a defensive line coach. He was new there. I had to know it. And so that meant when everybody else was taking naps in between, I had to study. That meant that at night when everybody else was, you know, dead tired, 2 practices a day. By the way, there was no shorts and shoulder pads back then. It was full gear 2 times a day, 8 weeks my rookie year. Yeah, the union forgot about us. It was brutal. It was brutal, man. And practices were 2.5, 3 hours long. Remember, Monty was a new coach. Floyd was a new coach. So they didn't know what anybody for the Lions could do except lose. And, you know, that was the way they put it. So they pounded us. I mean, they put it on us, man, to make the Lions be viewed differently than they had been, as a bumbling, stumbling team that would beat itself. So we were real detail oriented. And so that produced the Silver Rush, a great defensive line.
Yep.
And all the credit goes to Floyd Peters, Doug English, Dave Purefoy, John Woodcock, and another guy named William Gay. You couldn't do what I did as an individual. You had to have a team, you know. Rushing the quarterback is like herding cattle. I beat my man coming around. If the left end doesn't contain him, he gets out. You see it all the time now because they're so selfish in today's game. They don't understand that. You need those other 3 guys. That's why I call the 4-3 or a 4-man line.
Yeah.
You're working like an offensive line. You're sharing the same brain. And we caught on to that right away. And that's what made us successful is the Silver Rush.
100%. Obviously, one of the greatest defensive lines of all time, defensive fronts of all time. Yeah, if people haven't seen film of the Silver Rush, obviously go and look that up because a scary, scary dominant defensive line. Okay, so while the NFL doesn't currently recognize sacks pre-82 as official, which is obviously, I mean, just ridiculous, by the way. Like you said, they're still tackles for loss, but hopefully at some point that'll be rectified. Very recently, you received some incredibly exciting news when Pro Football Reference reveal of sack statistics prior to the 82 season saw you move right to the very top of the single season list when achieving 23 in a single season, your rookie season for the Lions.
Yeah.
That I want to really emphasize because obviously both Michael Strahan and TJ Watt, 22.5, which is obviously the official record, but that came when those 2 players respectively were 8 and 4 year veterans. You did it in your first year in the league. So what was your reaction to the news of PFR releasing and how much does that record mean to you?
I cried because it's been, 45, 46 years.
Yep.
It was kind of like the way you feel when you're vindicated. Seb, I have never talked about my rookie year because the way I was coached, I was always trying to supersede that 23 sacks with 18 and 16 and 13 in St. Louis in my first year there. It's always best to be your own worst critic. And that's what Floyd taught me to be. I was first. I was driven to be the best that I could be as a defensive lineman. But the way to do that was you had to get to the quarterback. in those days. You asked me how did it feel? Right away, I realized that after going through what we went through to, 2021, what pulled me through a very dark time for us all. And that was that inner drive that I had that I needed to get through a very unique time in life. No one had any experience. There was nobody to call and go, hey man, what do I do during the pandemic? What you're going through now is you're traveling blind. I have never been good at that. I've always been a planner. I've always known where I want to wind up a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. And all the negativity going around, death counts, how many people had COVID, that was going on daily.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a rough time. They made that announcement right there in the middle of it. It was around July. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't even know it. I had spoke with John Turley. He sent me all my sacks. He's a brilliant man. He had broken down how many sacks that I got and how many plays and this and that. And one of the most incredible things, the thing that I'm most proud of that football fans probably wouldn't be interested is what I call something at bats, something you should take a look at. Lawrence Taylor and the Giants, you break down how many games were they leading and he got the rush to passer. And then you break down how many times did we play against the Lions with our record and people didn't have to throw the ball. And yet I came out of the games with X amount of sacks. That to me was the thing to be the most proud of. Simply put, I didn't get as many at-bats as the guys that I'm being compared to.
Yeah.
Think about Leslie O'Neal, San Diego Chargers. That'd be like playing for the Rams in their heyday. You're always in the lead.
Yeah.
That's when people have to throw.
Yeah.
We were never in the lead unless you came to the Silverdome. I mean, we just weren't. We weren't a very good team overall. We had patches. We had good special team. We had spots. If you came to the Silverdome, it was a nightmare. We could not play on the road. We just weren't good enough. And so we were always behind. We were always fumbling, bumbling. And I take the blame as I was one of those 53 men. But if you look at the at-bats, that's what John Turley shared with me. And he was like, hey, look, man, if you would have got the rush the passer like an LT, like a Leslie O'Neal for the Chargers, and on and on and on. Fred Dean, he was with the San Francisco 49ers. Harvey Martin, he was with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, Roger Staubach, they were offensive juggernauts. And us, on the other hand, we had to pick and choose our times that we would get the rush to passer. When he shared that with me, that brought out in me a certain amount of, okay, I guess I did do good, because it's really hard to tell when nobody's talking about it. And then the last part of that, part B of that was I had moved on, man. I had met the most beautiful woman, the girl of my dreams. I'd had 2 kids. I've had 5 grandkids and 1 on the way. I had not thought about sacks, whether it be 23 or 53. I hadn't given it any thought from January of 1990. I opened my first turnkey operation called Mailboxes, etc. I was in a whole new world now. Now I was hiring people and dealing with the public, and I went right into the workforce. And, I had to try and convert my focus on providing for a family in the real world. So I was challenged, like all athletes are.
100%. Well put. Okay, so I want to move on to some very exciting things you've been getting up to since retiring as an NFL player in 91. Firstly, Bubba's boneless ribs. So in 2006, after 20 years of working on it, you patented both the product and process for removing bones from an intact slab of ribs and saw success on ABC show Shark Tank when partnering with Damon John. Since opened your own restaurant, Bubba's Q Restaurant in Avon, Ohio, as well as released cookbooks, all that kind of thing, all alongside your very own daughter and business partner, Brittany. On your Shark Tank appearance, you mentioned that if it wasn't for Brittany, you still wouldn't be doing what you're doing. So how much have you enjoyed carrying out this business venture with your daughter and live out your passion as a barbecue entrepreneur?
You would not believe it, man. That has been my most satisfying part. More importantly, to see my son and my daughter parlay that into food trucks. They have multiple trucks. Both of my daughter is on the West Coast and my son is still in Ohio. The pandemic just kind of killed, the restaurant business, the food business hasn't returned. And with inflation, to try and purchase ribs in today's market, it doesn't make business sense. But for me, the takeaway from that is that my kids thought enough of me waking them up at 4 and 5 in the morning when they were in grade school to be part of the family business. That makes me feel really proud. That's something I'm always willing and ready to pass on the accolades to them, because they've taken my simple recipes and gone to the next level. My daughter just was a contestant on Barbecue Brawl, and that's something she enjoys doing.
Wow.
I wonder where she gets it from. She likes to compete. Can't imagine. She loves to compete. Backgammon, cards, anything. Dice, she wants to compete. Let's go, Dad. Come on. Hit you with her elbow. You want to wrestle? Like, no, honey. But when I see that, I know that I've given my children and my grandchildren, they provided me with beautiful, healthy grandkids. I know that this wasn't just about me. I know that I have transferred my legacy, which is to never give up. Never pass on an opportunity to learn something new. Be challenged. Henceforth, writing a book. Never wrote a book. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Take on something that makes you have to, when it's just you. I just got a nasty picture what I was going to say when it's you getting out of the shower and you look in the mirror. That's not a thought I want to think about myself. But when I think about that, you want to be able to answer those hard questions. Like, what am I about? What do I care about? What do I love? What do I give back to society? And so those are the kinds of things that when I'm challenged, those are the questions I ask myself. Why did God bring you here? And it wasn't to be selfish. It's to love my fellow man, even when it's difficult. Those are tough challenges. And I taught my kids that, and that's why they've gone off in a very difficult business, especially food trucks. Food trucks, brutal. I mean, you go into massive crowds of people. You've got a limited amount of food. You're either going to sell it all or you're not. And when you're done, the rest of it is going to the next homeless shelter because you got to make it fresh the next day. Yeah. That's the business they're in, and they are killing it. I don't even know how they get up and down in those trucks like that, but they love it. They're in their 30s and they're really, really good at it. They didn't get that from me. Food. I only made barbecue. I'm old school. I didn't put barbecue on top of French fries with these things, and they've come up with all these things, and their customers absolutely love it. As a father, that's all I can, expect, that I gave them something that, should they choose to, they can make a living on it, and they do very well with it.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Awesome to hear that obviously that passion has been passed down and they're still doing that kind of thing. That was great to hear. Great to discover. Okay, so as well as your bonus ribs business, more recently you've been working on something very exclusive and also exciting, a new comic book about football, superheroes, aliens, and animals, as well as a message to mankind. The logos and characters of which you've copyrighted. Privately, you've sent me some of the graphics as well, which look fantastic, and I'm excited to see the comic book when it comes out. So, where did the inspiration for this storyboard and the characters come from, and how excited are you for the release of a comic book when it hits store shelves?
Some nights I can't go to sleep, and then other nights I can't stay asleep. And every morning that I wake up, it's, aside from being thankful that I woke up, it's the first thing that I think about. And I go right to my computer and I go back. And the art of writing, it's rewriting. And so every time, every time you write something and it's on your computer and you print it out and you start writing it, with every day that you grow and learn, you think of a new word, or you look up synonyms and you start going, ooh, I can say this in less words. Ooh, this is better. That character needs to be in this position. And, and you contact your illustrator and you change those things. Simply to take the first on, the way the log line will read, it'll read this. There are 7 characters and we name them the Super 7. And the name of the story is the Intergalactic Animal Football League presents the Super 7. 7 different animals that I won't go through in detail until the book comes out, because then I will come on social media and explain how the storyline went and how I came to them. But while I was on the sideline, I saw phenomenal athletes. One in particular, Earl Campbell. He made the rest of us men look like boys. And personally, I was glad I didn't play against him, because the AFC and the NFC, we didn't intertwine back then.
Yeah,
they played each other and we played each other until you got to a certain point, the Super Bowl. But when I saw him on film, it frightened me. I thought, oh my goodness, this guy is really, really a beast. He hurt people. He had the ball and he hurt people. Nobody had seen that. I
Yeah.
mean, literally, it was the other way around, And so with the book, I indoctrinated some of the people that I saw on the sideline. One of my characters is an offensive lineman. His name is Bubba. He's a silverback gorilla. And just to give you the log line, the way it's written is the Super Seven is a group of competitive alien animals that came down to Earth in the vortex, swirl. And you see them, they're space vortex, water vortex, sand vortex. It came down to the space vortex technology that we don't even have today. And they left climate destruction on Mars to settle here on Earth. While here on Earth, they saw similar problems that they had on Mars, where they were headed towards the same fate, failing ecosystem, desertification, and the world was becoming uninhabitable for plants and animals. So they vowed to restore the land, and they first must vie for supremacy on the gridiron against its bitter rivals, rather than working to protect the population from the instant annihilation of the villainess, the Queen Tick Eve. And she is a character that when I'm asleep, I wake up going, ah. I really do. I mean, once I researched and went out to the Grand Canyon National Park, I was convinced that that was where the story needed to take place. So they came from Mars, they landed in the Grand Canyon. There are thousands of undiscovered caves. And there's one thing I want to leave you with, my friend. The bonus that I found was while my wife and I were in the Grand Canyon last year, we found out that there's a tribe in the Grand Canyon National Park that's been there for 800 years called the Havasupai tribe. They live a mile down on the western rim. I never knew that. And so once I found that, and then we went there to research them, and they wouldn't allow us to go to the West Wing because of COVID. But conceivably, in my head as the writer's view, there could be a football game going on inside of all those mountains, 277 miles long, 18 miles wide, and a mile and a quarter deep. Anything could be going on in those caves that man doesn't know about. And so I set my story inside of the Grand Canyon National Park coming this fall.
I love it. I love it. And obviously when that drops, I'll make sure to tell all my listeners and viewers, because they can go and check that out. And I myself am very excited for that. So
Thanks,
that is going to be awesome. Okay. So Al, I want to end with some quick fire questions. You ready?
Ready.
Let's do it. Okay. Favorite takeout food?
Chinese.
Chinese? Yep. Good choice.
Yeah.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Dogs? Yeah.
Dogs. Cane Corsos. Absolutely. The bigger, the better. Not those little yappers. Not the little not pocket dogs. I'm not they're in the cat family. Nobody's never really explained it to them. Yeah. Big dogs. No, not dogs you can carry in your hand. No offense to them. For those of you who like your dogs to be the same size as a mouse, but no, not for me.
Okay.
I could accidentally sit on it or something.
Okay. Favorite music artist?
Jimi Hendrix. No question about it.
Yeah, one of the best.
Didn't have to go far looking for that one.
Nope, no. Okay, favorite sports movie?
Rudy.
Yep.
Without question, Rudy. Second would be the Titans, the one with Denzel Washington in it.
Yeah, I remember the Titans.
Alabama. That's my second favorite. And then the other one is Coach Carter with Samuel Jackson, because that was an actual high school. I played high school basketball against.
No way.
Orange, New Jersey. Yes way.
Wow.
Against Coach Carter. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever have a welcome to the NFL moment? And if so, who gave it to you?
Oh, yeah. His nickname was Hog Hanna, John Hanna.
Yep.
Played right offensive guard for the New England Patriots. I was probably at about 15 sacks, and I was sack happy. And in the game of football, there are things called keys. If a tackle blocks down, any defensive end knows close. You close because he did not block you for a reason. Something's coming. That's one of the first lessons you learn, And I was so sack happy, and I knew I could beat this guy I was playing against that played for the New England Patriots at the time. Grogan was the quarterback. He goes down. I'm looking at Grogan, seeing him in my eyes. I'm thinking I'm going to kill him. Hannah comes over, traps me. Not only did he trap me, but we were facing our sideline where my teammate was going, come on, Bubba, go get him, come on. He hit me, and the next thing I knew, I was on the airplane with a smelling salts in my nose. knocked me out cold in front of my sideline.
Whoa.
That was a tough one to get over. I mean, I literally didn't come to practice that Monday. I contemplated, the Q word. I mean, I was so embarrassed, and Floyd came to my rescue and said, "Hey, that happens to us all." And 3 days later, I came back and I took it out on somebody else, the next Sunday. But I wasn't sure that I was a man enough to play in the NFL after that. He hit me. His whole body went through my ear and came out the other side of my, that's what it felt. Oh, he hit me. And I deserved it because I didn't read my keys. Everybody saw it. So,
okay. Your first car.
My first car was a car that I still own, not the same car, but one of it. It's a Regency 98. Just a big old thing, lots of room. Still has an 8-track cassette. My old JVC stereo is still pumping it out and got new speakers in it. Always wanted to have a Regency 98 in the family, and I still have one.
Nice. I love that you still got it. That's brilliant. Okay. The hardest worker in the Lions weight room.
Whoa. Ironically, the guy just reached out to me on social media. His name was Steve Deutsch. And Deutsch's contribution to my career was don't get locked up in the locker room, for me personally, because he always had shoulders and lower back problems. But he was a guy that welcomely lift weights before training camp in the morning. Who does that? I mean, you got to get through 2 practices, 3 hours long and 100 degrees. He's in the weight room, coming out all sweaty and then he would lift with the lineman when it was their designated time to lift. He just was a weight lifting nut. And I used to look at him like the whole concept of weights just went over my head. I understand it now, But Deutsch was the strongest player that I had seen to date. Now everybody knows, you train hard, you can become something special, with the addition of weights and position training. But he was purely the absolute strongest human being that I had ever seen, until I started hearing stories about people like Marshall Yonder, which we talked about already. But I was never a big weightlifter.
Yeah, runner. Basketball background you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I was a runner. I believe you don't want to get tired. Never get tired. Don't put your hands on your hips. Don't bend over. And so when I saw a guy doing that, I knew I had him. I knew he was done. Couldn't breathe. You can't go nowhere without air.
That's brilliant. Okay, your funniest ever teammate that you've ever had?
We had a guy in my rookie year. His name was John Woodcock. God bless his soul. He's in pass rush heaven. But whenever we would be at training camp, how they would always serve things like something green. Whenever we would have those green peas, he would push it up his nose, sling them, and spit it at you. We were discussing. I won't even go over some of these, but it was him. He was never, ever ashamed to laugh at himself. And Woody taught me that. He taught me he's from the University of Hawaii. He played inside, and he was just a tremendous human being. And he taught me, don't take yourself so seriously. Don't be afraid to make other people comfortable by poking at yourself. He was good at it. He would tell you story after story, about himself, about dumb stuff he did, living on the island while he was bored in Hawaii. And, if you had never been to Hawaii, you're like, bored in Hawaii? Literally, it was a small island. And, once I got to play over there in Pro Bowl. But John Woodcock, without question, was the absolute funniest human being I've ever, and to this day, still the funniest person.
That's amazing.
Entertaining. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Love it. Okay. Best locker room prank you ever saw?
I think the best locker room prank ever was by me.
Oh, yeah?
I think I superseded any rookie trick. And the Lions had a tradition where they wanted the rookies to go get the donuts on Thursday after weigh-in. And I was a starter, and so it was like week 12. We didn't have bye weeks then yet. A guy named Black Charlie Weaver, who was a veteran by about 7-8 years of him, came to me and he goes, "All right, Big Bub, it's your turn. You get the donuts." And I said, "What donuts? I'm leading the league in sacks, right?" I'm like, "I ain't no freaking rookie." And he goes, "You got donut duty." I said, "I ain't going to get no damn donuts. I'm just telling you that." And he said, "All right, well then get up on your chair, grab your testicles, and sing your school's fight song." I said, "I wasn't in the damn band or a cheerleader. I ain't singing no song." And he said, you got to do one or the other, damn it. And then a couple of the other veterans start walking toward me. And this one guy that he was the toughest guy I was, afraid of, named Mike Lucci. Mike Lucci came over and Mike had, he put the stare on me. I said, all right, I'll get the donuts. So this was the Wednesday before weigh-in, and the donuts was due the next day. So I brought in like dozens of donuts. But when I left the donut place, I licked them all. I got sick from licking them. I was like, I'll show their asses. You want some donuts? So I brought the donuts. They opened up the pack, and people started touching them, and they were sticking to their hands. And I was sitting there, and I had a smile on my face. And Weaver and them this was when guys still smoked in the locker room. They're over there smoking. They're eating these damn donuts that I already licked. I was like, how's the donuts? So I told them after. And they were like, what the hell kind of donuts was those? Would you have them in your car all night? I said, no, they're ABC donuts. ABC? I said, yeah, they already been chewed. They never asked me to get any more donuts.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so I was a character, man. The guys are all, whenever I go back to the line, they remind me, but, I felt like I was a guy that could do that. And that had to do with the toughness, and they never could make me buy donuts after that,
Yeah.
I thought that was, you know what I mean? That was the new Lions that we needed to be. We needed to be, all right, make me do it. All right, if you're going to make me do it, I'm going to do it. But a whole bunch of y'all going to go away from here on stretchers. That was how I wanted to play as a Lion. But we never arrived to that point because things changed quickly in that league. But they're still struggling, creating a culture of constant improvement in Detroit. And I don't know why, but I'm not in the football industry. But, that to me should supersede whether it's Aiden Hutchinson or anybody. You got to change the culture.
Yep.
The culture has got to be, all right, we may not win this game, but all your players are going to go back to the bus on a stretcher. And then as a result, people don't want to play against you because, they keep their good players out because you're going to hurt them. I was hated by fans. I mean, I love that part. When I went to visit the team, they threw things at me. They had dummies, especially Philadelphia. They hated me.
Yeah.
Buffalo, the Raiders, when the fans threw things at me, they threw urine on me, threw stuff on me. And I just look at them and I turn around, keep my helmet on, and I tell them, I'm going to take it out on Stabler. I'm going to take it out on Ferguson. And I would. And I did. That was my job.
Yep.
It wasn't personal. You got the ball. I don't want number 75 you got over here who's supposed to block me. He doesn't have the ball. I don't even want to touch him. That was the way I saw the game. That's why I have my little paperweight here.
There it is.
131. Who would think a guy who's been around this long would be excited over a little piece of rock or glass? But this is a really cool club, a fraternity to be a member of, because your mama and your daddy can't get you in that club. Can't pay nobody to do your push-ups. You got to show up. To me, if they could establish that it's hardly a game for a delicate boy, I'd be real, real happy with that number 20 jersey you're wearing of Barry Sanders or Billy Sims, whichever one, or Lynn Barney, either all three great football players. But I think that's the thing that hasn't changed. I've been out of football for going on 32 years. And while they've changed a lot of rules, Imano. That guy's lined up in front of you and you got to whoop his rear end. And I don't care what stars on your helmet, a buffalo, a dog, a dolphin, whatever it is, that part has not changed. And it's never going to change, not in football. And once people see on film, you are the weak spot, that's why you study film. You're looking for a weakness. And boy, if it's you, it's a long day.
Yeah.
That's the NFL.
Yep. Put it well. Put it well there. Okay, so was there any reason for selecting number 60 as your number of choice throughout your NFL career?
It wasn't my number of choice. My number, if you see some of the original pictures, like the thing you used in there, I had on number 80. And then right there in 1978, that was when they had to distinguish the line of scrimmage. And so if you were inside on the line of scrimmage, you had to have a 60, 70, 80. I mean, 60, 70, 90s were new back then, because there was actually a couple of players that were wearing 91, like Robert Brazil, 99. 99 wasn't very popular back then yet. So they gave me 60. I had just got in the Tampa Bay game 3 sacks and an interception. I come in on Monday. I went over to my locker and I said, hey, Friday, the hell is this? And it had Baker on the back. He's like, oh, the league changed your number to 60. I was like, 60? I was like, all right, well, I'm Otis Sistrunk. That kind of got me a lot of respect from the veterans because the veterans used to argue about what number they got.
Right.
That was a big deal. That was a big deal. I go to the Pro Bowl. Dennis Harrow would have a fit. I'm 60. I'm like, dude, I'm in the Pro Bowl. I don't care. I'm getting a $5,000 bonus. And I'm getting some Nike sneakers from Nike. Yeah. What a difference, huh? $5,000 was the bonus if you made 3/4 of the season. So if you played 12 games out of 16, you wrote that in for a little something, If you had helped the team get to the playoffs, it was something. And then if you went to any all-star game, it was something, before you knew it, you were making like $35,000, $40,000. Woo-hoo, single. Boy, it's just amazing to just think back when I do these kinds of things. But
okay, describe your 5-sack game in November 78 against the Bucs in one word for me.
Driven. Smelled blood. Somebody told me at some point, hey, do you know you have, that kind of thing. And I was like, no. And then Floyd came over to me and he got into me, got in my face. And he said, you better not, GD, get complacent. You shut up, you spitting in my face, grabbed me on the sideline when I had 4, they had to separate us. And he knew if he pissed me off, I'd take it out on the Bucs. And the Bucs had a quarterback in there like Mike Jones or something. I don't think he'd even started. And so he was running all over the place. And I went and got him. That made 5. And who do you think was the first person to congratulate me? Floyd. Floyd Peters. Same guy that, cursed me to shame and brought me to tears. I tell you numerous times on the sideline where I was so mad I was crying, and Doug English would have to separate us. And I would be like, Floyd, you got one more effing time to put your fingers in my face. And he goes, well, what are you going to do? And he put his finger right in my face. You can't touch me. We had some times, but it was all in the name of winning. Got heated over there.
Yeah.
Heated over there. I don't think the relationship of teammates should be a marketing point because it'd be like them bringing a camera into my house and when me and my wife have a disagreement over how to raise our kids. That's just temporary and that's just a small part of, the job that needs to be done. When they show that to the public, they think that Al and Seb are going to have a fight. No, we're just heated in the moment and we want to win.
Yeah,
we're going to go have a beer together when the game's on. We're going to shake hands and say, hey, man, I'm sorry, man. I lost it, man. No, man. I want you to keep that fire. Keep it. I don't want to play with a guy that don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's generally what happened. I mean, you'll never hear where they had a fight after the game was over because you shake hands and you go. I've had numerous of those, especially with Floyd. Had them with players. In my day, there was a defensive back named James Hunter. He would come in the huddle and say things like, we need an effing pass rush. I'd be like, man, cover somebody. Get your butt out of the huddle. Shut up. His name was Hound Dog. He was a good guy, but he felt like he was back there too long without a sack. And I would tell him in the huddle, I did. I used to go over to him and say, hey, man, don't cover this play. He's like, what you talking about? Like, I'm going to get him. And I actually saw him on film one time. I told him, don't cover his guy. And he literally stood out there. And the ball was snapped. Guy ran by him. I went and got the sack. And then when he had the answer to that in Monday, they're like, what are you doing? He didn't tell him. But I had told him, I was like, this guy ain't going to be able to block me, man. I said, I got him. And he did that to show me on film on Monday that he believed in me. This is a guy we used to fight in the huddle. That's the game.
Yeah.
That's the game, man. If you're not that intense, I don't want you on my team. If you don't think it's worth fighting, especially if you're getting your butt kicked and somebody comes down and says, hey, we got to get our heads out of our butt. That's the game. That's the game. And that part that they do that over there, mic'd up or whatever, I don't think that's for public, if you will, consumption. I don't think they need to digest that because they won't be able to understand how heated, what's at stake. And probably, Seb, no matter how many guys you have on, there's no greater pressure. Sunday night, I'm going to get your 3 last games. So if you played against Dallas and we have Dallas on the schedule this week, I'm watching you. And I'm like, okay, but let me watch Seb. Let me see what moves work. So if he's kicking your rear end, I just watch you get your rear end kicked. If you get trapped like Hannah did me, I'm thinking, all right, next team was thinking, let's trap Baker. Let's trap him.
Yeah.
He's flying up the field. It's no secret. So when you get picked to go to the Pro Bowl or All Pro, that's a big deal. That's before all the social media and voting and all that. But when the players, coaches used to pick Pro Bowlers, back in the early 80s, late 70s, not social media votes. Like, oh, I played against him. He should be in the Pro Bowl, and then they voted on it. And then the coaches voted. Coaches' vote acted as like a third of it. Now I think social media and all that's a third of it or something to that effect. Same thing with the Hall of Fame. I guess that's a good way to sell tickets and get people involved, but I'm not so sure it's a good idea. People that pick those kinds of things that involve legacies should probably be experts and insiders of the game, in my opinion. But I'll leave that to Deion Sanders. He seemed to have a problem with it. He's gone off on the Hall of Fame a couple of times these last couple of weeks.
Okay, Al, and finally, your very own message to mankind. So please go ahead.
This is paraphrasing the book because I don't want to give it away, but what we've all been through these last 30 months, guys, we're all in this together, whether we're across the pond or if we're on the other side of the United States, the United States. I say that again, United States. That means we're united. That means we're on the same team. Playing in the NFL, being on Shark Tank, several turnkey operations. The one takeaway is that teams get better results. Please don't forget that.
There we go. Powerful ending to a fantastic interview. Al, Bubba Baker, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute honor speaking to you and having you as a guest on my show. Where can people find you on social media? Check out your Boneless Ribs business, upcoming comic book, and anything else you've currently got going on.
Well, they can catch me on Instagram at Al Bubba Baker, TikTok at Al Bubba Baker 111. You can tell I'm new to these social media platforms. These are my daughter and my granddaughter. Bubba's Q60 is on Twitter. You can get me by putting in Al Bubba Baker. And then one of my favorite ones is LinkedIn because it's so diverse around the world. Al Bubba Baker on LinkedIn. Follow me because I'm going to be giving some views from the writer's view, from this sick, damaged mind of mine about the book, about the story. It's my way of honoring some great athletes and also addressing the fears and the concerns that I had personally during the pandemic and still trying to heal and heal others. Thanks for having me, Seb. I really appreciate all 4 times you had to start all over.
You've got it. It's been an absolute blast. It's been a great interview. I can't wait to share this with my followers and listeners. I think they're really going to enjoy this one. And again, just thank you for your time and looking forward to the book coming out. Looking forward to staying in touch and wish you all the best, Al.
Thanks, man.
And there he goes, the fantastic and insightful Al Bubba Baker. From his time on the field as a record-breaking NFL defensive end to his recent career as an incredibly successful entrepreneur, there truly is seemingly no end to Al's already long list of achievements and accolades. And it was an absolute pleasure having him on my podcast. And if you'd like to keep up to date with Al on his social media channels, as well as check out Bubba's Boneless Ribs and the Super 7 comic book, then you can do so by checking out the links in the description of this episode.
I've got many more great guests coming very soon, so stay tuned right here on Seb Talks Sports. Catch you soon, guys.